Well, welcome to another Humboldt Tea Time, and I'm really thrilled to say we're back here in the Eureka Visitor Centre today. Thank you very much indeed to our hosts, and we're joined by Fire Chief Sean Robertson. Sean, it's a delight to meet you. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Do you drink tea?
I do.
Well, that's very good. Now, today we're having a mix of sort of regular black tea and Earl Grey, just to change it up a bit.
That's great. I grew up drinking both of those.
Okay. Now, you grew up
coffee
in South Africa.
Yes.
So I'm very curious as to how somebody from the other side of the world ended up in Humboldt County in Eureka.
Well, it's a good story. I was traveling in Europe in 1994, and I met several people there, including my current wife, and we both went our separate ways because I was traveling there for only a few months. I started writing letters to each other because this was before email, and I decided to come and visit her as well as some of the other friends I met, and we got married 3 months later, and here I am 26 years later.
Now, is she from Humboldt County?
She's from Walnut Creek.
Oh, not too far.
Down in the Bay Area, and we came up here for her to go to Humboldt State, and things just worked out. I became a volunteer firefighter in Arcata, and then decided that was a great career for me, and I got hired in Eureka in 1998, and here I am.
Now, you have a very sort of a mix of Scottish and Irish names, Sean Robertson, so I was wondering, being from South Africa, whether you had ancient roots actually probably in the UK.
The best I know from talking to my parents about it is we're fifth generation in South Africa. And then there's definitely some Scots-Irish on my dad's side, and then I think Scots, Portuguese, and even some Afrikaner in my mother's side. So that's about all I know. I know my dad had a Robertson tartan, and he got that made into waistcoats, no kilts for us.
Kilts, oh, okay.
No kilts, yeah. So yeah, it's an interesting legacy I've not looked too much into, and I just have my brother still in my family. My parents both died a few years ago, but I just recently went to visit because I have a 3-year-old nephew, and I'd never met him because I haven't been back for 7 years.
It's a beautiful country. I was very lucky enough to go there a while ago, and of all my travels, I say it's the best experience I've ever had.
Oh, great. Yeah, every time I go there, there's more I want to see and explore, and yeah, I have family and friends in different cities and towns, and when I go there, it's usually no more than the 3 weeks, and it's just not long enough.
No, I think you're right. You
need
a long time to explore it all.
Yeah, and maybe you know, but when you visit family, that's kind of your focus. You don't get to go explore a whole lot if you have those good family connections.
And did you grow up in the apartheid era, or did you grow up later beyond that?
Well, apartheid, I guess officially ended in 1994 when the ANC took over the formal government from the National Party. So I got to see the release of Nelson Mandela and the unbanning of the ANC and other parties in 1990. So certainly I lived through those very tumultuous last few years of apartheid. And so, yeah, it's definitely formed my perspective on things on a global and a multiple levels. So it's part of who I am, I think.
I, like most people, I think, thought I understood apartheid and thought I understood how it worked. But when I went to South Africa and discovered what the reality was, it was heartbreaking. But the reconciliation, the way the country has moved on is absolutely remarkable. It's incredibly fascinating, a real positivity that came out of such a dark period. People have really, genuinely, it seems to me anyway, maybe you have a different perspective, have moved on.
Yeah, the reconciliation process was incredible, and it's, I think, very unique in the world, especially a takeover of a massive change of government like that. I think Desmond Tutu had a huge part in that, and reading his perspective is really enlightening. Yeah, I think South Africa wears the racism everywhere. It's not something that nobody wants to talk about because there's such a mix, such a diversity, it's such a part of everything. but the legacy of apartheid will continue for hundreds of years because the economic impacts are still there. When you go visit, it's so obvious the disparities in income are massive, and the lack of basic resources for the majority of the population is still there.
Yes.
But as a white South African, that's middle upper class. I had a great transition coming as an immigrant to this country, and I have a great experience going back. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting perspective.
Now, when you were a wee young lad in your tartan waistcoat,
yeah,
did you want to be a firefighter? Was that your goal? Was that your ambition?
No, in South Africa, there was never a consideration of that as a career. The only exposure I ever had to firefighting in South Africa was a friend of mine actually got a job there as I think a fire marshal, and I only learned that after I was graduated high school. It was only when I came here that it became an option as a career. After I became a volunteer here, and the first time I went back after that to South Africa, I visited the local fire station and learned a bit more about how it's structured there. It's much more of a national organization, similar to some European countries have it that way, or Australia. Mm-hmm. And I think the UK is somewhat similar in terms of it's organized nationally, but then the regional organizations. So no, I only really thought about it as a career when I came here.
Now, it's a very dangerous profession. It's something that takes an enormous amount of strength, I think, for an individual. What was it that attracted you to this world?
Well, being a volunteer, I was exposed to the job, to the responses, to the training and things like that. And what attracted me to it was it just challenged me in every way that nothing else I had ever done before had. And it was just really interesting. And again, my privilege being able to travel like I have is I'm, I guess, a little interested in a life of adventure. And I'd been here for 2 years. It still felt like I was traveling, and this kind of became an extension of that. And it just is a really rewarding career, not just because it fulfills those different things, but it also fulfills, I think, a need or a feeling I have of helping other people. And now, as a role in fire chief, my primary people that I serve are the people who work for the fire department, the firefighters. And so I just continue that service, and it's not, it's not a token statement for me, having done this for so long. It's really the giving back is an important thing. Now,
last summer in particular, there were a number of wildfires relatively close actually to Eureka, certainly out in Willow Creek, etc. And we had a huge influx of firefighters coming from out the region who actually were billeted at Redwood Acres, I believe.
Right.
How do you facilitate that? How do you two work together? How do the different firefighters work together when something like that happens?
Well, there's a pretty well-structured system in the state, and then in the nation in the state CAL FIRE, and then through the nation the Forest Service, because any wildland is generally either going to be private timberland or it's going to be under some government responsibility. In California, a lot of the places where we have these wildfires, it's in the state responsibility area, so it's not local government, it's not BLM or the Forest Service or the parks. So generally, how those happen is we're all part of a mass mutual aid system. So if there's an incident somewhere, the local entities will respond, and that will trigger a resource request, and they will just expand from there. The jurisdictional part is what makes things change a bit. So for example, the fires you're talking about was on the Forest Service property, so they would call in a lot of Forest Service resources. So that's why you would see crews from Florida or New Mexico, or even, I think we sometimes have them from Samoa and Guam. But we don't get called, and it's 50 miles away. It's because that's how their system works, and it's the mutual aid, but then it's the resource reimbursement process.
So are there any changes that we can see in the local fire departments? Anything coming up that the public need to know about?
Well, I think the state, through CAL FIRE, has done a huge amount of work to do more fuel management to prevent these huge incidents from occurring. Locally, we have some fantastic prescribed burn practices through the Yurok tribe, and then the Southern Humboldt Prescribed Burn Association is doing some great work with landowners to kind of prepare that. But locally, our biggest challenge is recruitment and retention. It's a problem across the state and the nation. Serendipitously enough, this week I'm going down to Academy of the Redwoods at College of the Redwoods to do part of a career day. We've started a cadet firefighter program where you apply, we put you through tiers of training to become a career firefighter, and we're working on our junior firefighter program to start in the high schools. And all of these efforts are towards helping educate people that the fire service is a great career. Yes, it is very risky and hazardous, like you said. Awareness of mitigating those risks, whether they're short-term, like going into a burning building, or long-term, like sleep fatigue and exposure to different things, is helping us take care of our firefighters throughout their careers, because the goal is for them to have a life after that. But again, that retention is just a challenge, and we're trying to just deal with it at the local level.
And how long does it train for somebody who comes in as a new recruit before they are really fully fledged as a firefighter?
2 years is a pretty good period. They have to go through an EMT and a firefighter academy. The EMT is a full semester, so about 6 months. And then the firefighter academy isn't quite developed at CR or anywhere. There's some localized ones like the Eel River Valley Academy. And those are generally about the same period of time. So you could get it all done in 6 months, and then 6 months of experience is good, but it takes a lot of exposure to those different events and incidents to really be ready to do it professionally, or for a career, I should say.
Now, I don't know if this is accurate, but I knew some firefighters in the Bay Area, and it seemed to me they'd all retired early. They were very young men who just sort of retired. They were, wouldn't say burnt out, it was nothing like that, but they really, it's a very stressful profession. And I'm just wondering, is that also an issue, that it's hard to keep people in the force?
Yes, it's becoming more of an issue. I don't know if it's a different generation, or I think we're exposed to different stresses and experiences. But I've been in this career for, like I said, 26 years. And as the fire chief, I've seen several people either resign because it wasn't the job for them, or go out on a disability or retirement because of stress. And that stuff does build up, and being aware of it means recognizing the symptoms and the effects before they become really bad. And really bad means firefighters committing suicide. And we don't want to have things like that happen, or having negative effects on their relationships at home. And we're trying to be more aware of those. So yeah, that is definitely a new reality for us, dealing with those stresses. And any first responder occupation just has those, because they're just accumulative. And for us firefighters, it's not just the trauma, it's also the sleep fatigue, because there's not a whole lot we can do about that. That's just the nature of our job. It accumulates over time. I mean, I haven't been in a position to respond to incidents for 10 years because I've been in the admin side for that long. All right.
Yeah, he always joins us around about this time, so there he is again. Sorry, Sean.
No worries, but it still affects my sleep, so it's definitely something we're becoming more aware of, and looking for ways to mitigate that.
Because it is a job where basically you are continually on call. Even if you may not be on shift, you are always on call.
Yes, and even as the fire chief, I have the duty where I'm on call for incidents, but as my phone's ringing in my pocket, yeah, it's something that you always have to be ready for, because when the call comes in, we respond.
Right. Well, Sean, I think the fire service is in very safe hands. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. How was your tea?
Thank you. Oh, it's
Was
delicious.
Good? Oh, good. Yes, this is an unusual combination that we're trying this week.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Thank you.
And any plans to visit South Africa again soon, or any more travel coming up?
No travel this year, but I definitely want to go back to South Africa more often and visit my brother and his family, and visit just friends and family I haven't seen, and then explore.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful country to explore.
Yes.
Well, Sean, you're very much a part of our community here in Humboldt, so we hope you'll be staying here forever anyway. And it's a great pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure. And thank you so much indeed to the Eureka Visitor Centre for being our hosts again today. It's always a pleasure to be in their beautiful facility. And we'll look forward to seeing you for another Humboldt Today very soon, or another Humboldt Tea Time, I should say, very soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.